हेलो स्टूडेंट। जो आज टॉपिक हम लोग देखने जा रहे हैं वो एवोल्यूशनरी डेवलपमेंट मॉडल। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट साइकिल्स में हम लोगों ने अभी तक जो पढ़ा वो था वाटरफॉल मॉडल, इटरेटिव एनहांसमेंट मॉडल एंड प्रोटोटाइप मॉडल। द टॉपिक दैट वी आर गोइंग टू डिस्कस इज एवोल्यूशनरी डेवलपमेंट मॉडल। तो एवोल्यूशनरी डेवलपमेंट मॉडल इट रिजेंबल्स वेरी मच विद द इटरेटिव एनहांसमेंट मॉडल। ये बहुत ज़्यादा इटरेटिव एनहांसमेंट मॉडल की तरह है। इसमें इसमें जो फेजेस हैं, द सेम फेजेस एज डिफाइंड इन द वाटरफॉल मॉडल अकर हियर इन सिलिकल फैशन। इसमें आपके जो मॉडल्स हैं, ये मॉडल आपका आपका काफ़ी कुछ वाटरफॉल मॉडल के स्टेप्स को ही फॉलो करता है। और इसके अंदर फ़र्क ये है कि आप करता है, एंड दिस मॉडल डिफर फ्रॉम द इटरेटिव एनहांसमेंट मॉडल इन द सेंस that it does not require a usable product at the end of each cycle. It means in this model we follow the procedure of the software waterfall model and iteratively like in iterative enhancement model, but the difference is that there is no pressure to release a timely release like in इटरेटिव एनहांसमेंट मॉडल। तो मेन बात है, इससे फर्क क्या पड़ता है। सपोज इसमें फर्क ये होता है कि अगर मान लीजिए अगर आपको एक प्रोडक्ट डेवलप करना है एंड यू आर नॉट अंडर प्रेशर दैट यू हैव टू डेवलप सच प्रोडक्ट और रिलीज अ delete a release of the product which satisfied a subset of requirements within a time, then you may be free to choose the set of requirement. For example, when we start working on the project, there are some functions which are based on the graphical user interface, and there are functions which are based on the file manipulations. There are some functions which are related with some types of queries that may be even be server based queries, and so there are some functions which are related with the updations. So there are different type of functions. When the client approaches you and he give you the final requirement or object of the final product, then you then he leave you free to decide what function you will design first or second and or third. You are free to set up the priority or sequence in between the requirements as per you. But in iterative enhancement model, it is a pressure on the developer that they should submit a timely release of the product so that the client can evaluate or validate the work done by the developer. This kind of time to time release pressure, the release is very useful in identifying the actual requirement of the client. But there is a pressure related with this also. For example, there are some projects in which you try to categorize the requirement as per your need or as per their category. If there are 10 modules in your project, and in this all the project modules from module 1 to 10 have a function which is common among these, that is related with the update of a particular value, then the developer would like to design all these functions which are which are very similar to each other and which do the same functionality in a batch, because that would be easier to hit. And if all the modules have some front end which are based on the certain GUI features, the developer would like to design all these modules front pages in a uh, in a batch wise process, batch way, or in a group, because he would be comfortable if he is designing the front page of the first module. He would be comfortable in doing that, and he will design the front end of the second module, then he will design the front end of the third, and likewise he will keep on constructing the front end of the 10 all the 10 modules. And similarly, there are certain server-based queries which are done with help of the different modules. Then for processing these type of queries through the server, he would first establish a connection with all the different modules. Then after that, he will like to write the queries which write the functions which process or generate queries to the server, because they will work on the same concept, and similar kind of programming style or skill would be required to design all these functions. So here I'm trying to explain you that the developer is interested in doing the similar kind of functionality existing in different module together at the time, or in a batch, because he would be more comfortable if he would do a similar kind of things in each and every module. But in the iterative enhancement model, there is a pressure that you should release one, or you should release a product, a prototype, or release one and release two and so on timely basis, so that customer can validate that whether the developer is understanding his objective or designing properly or not. For the example that I have taken here, in which a project is having 10 modules, in iterative enhancement model, the developer will have to focus on the module one. After module one is validated by the customer, then he would go for developing module 2, and similarly after completion of module 2 he would go for module 3 and so on. In this approach there is a problem. That in first module, first he would design the front page. After that he would write a function which is server based query. Then he would write a function that is an updation related function. So different kind of function he will design to complete a single module. After the completion of first module, he will start with the second module, or he would do different type of queries and requirements, functional requirements in module 2. In this approach, the developer is not free to choose or do the work according to his interest. So there is a pressure on the developer that he has to design or complete a certain module so he can show this to the client. While in the evolutionary development model, the client do not ask for the time to time release of the product. Instead, he set a time span for which he would wait, and after which the developer would give him the final product. Now comparing these two, we can say that in evolutionary model, the client do not get a final product till the end. This model is useful for project. Evolutionary model is useful for the project which are done using the new technology that is not well understood. And this is useful also for the complex project where all the functionality must be delivered at one time. but the requirement are unstable and not to be well understood at the beginning. The evolutionary model has the advantage. Suppose if you are, there is a complicated project and if you are not understanding the actual requirement of it, then first you will try to solve the function or problem which are well understood. By completing those requirements, you will go for the second set of requirements which are relatively tough but not that much complicated. And after completing all these, you will be have more clear idea about the requirement and the language. Here I am the language. Suppose the language is also a new language, then finally you will deal with the more complicated portion or the function. In this way, the developer get the freedom. He can learn or understand the project and the language in a better way, in a, and he will get the time to learn and understand the complicacy of the project. So evolutionary model is better where a new technology is used and where the project is so complicated where the requirements are not clear. In iterative enhancement model, we start by developing a very simplistic but usable database. In the iterative enhancement model, the release one does not satisfy most of the requirement, but it satisfies the very basics functions of the final project. After that, we keep on designing and implementing the complicated function. So both the technique, the iterative enhancement model and evolutionary model, solve the project by using the simple one, then harder and then harder. But in evolutionary model, does not provide a minimal version of the system so quickly. It designed in a step-by-step way like the iterative enhancement model, but there is no pressure to provide a minimal version of the system in a very short time. But in iterative enhancement model, you are under a pressure to give a time-based release of the product. So you choose the requirement or functionality so that you can provide the most simplistic form of the final projects. In the evolutionary models, the requirements are categorized. Okay, in the iterative iterative enhancement model, requirement are not categorized. In the not categorized. In the evolutionary model, the requirements are implemented by category rather than priority. This is the main difference between these two, that in iterative enhancement models, requirements are prioritized, and in evolutionary model, requirements are categorized. The difference between these two is that in iterative enhancement model, you will try to choose the requirement so that you can design the minimal version of the final product. But in evolutionary model, you would categorize, as I have told you, that similar kind of requirement will be grouped together and they will be handled in a group. And suppose GI requirement would be handled in one group, the update related requirement would be handled in one group, and the query based requirement would be handled in a group. So evolutionary model is better where the project is very complicated and you are not well aware of the new language or the new product you are working on. In this way, when you categorize these things, it is becomes simple to design and understand the complicacy of the project, and the design the function become much easier for developer. So that's all about the evolutionary model. While on the iterative enhancement model, we need to a time-based release at the end of each iteration. So there is a pressure related with iterative enhancement model, and with evolutionary model that is suitable for a complex project and where the platform is a new one, we try to prefer the evolutionary model. So that's all about this.